right, hey, Brett here, Metro Wines. We are doing round 2 of our content generation. I believe Andy's last week was on fresh summer wines. We're going to do a little bit about an unknown area, an unknown island off the coast of southern France called Corsica. Corsica is an island that, in terms of winemaking, is an area that is a lot lesser known than traditional France or Italy. Where it sits in the Mediterranean is actually a lot closer to Tuscany than it is in France itself. And actually takes on more Italian style, geographically, from a diversity standpoint, from a culture standpoint, and probably more from a wine standpoint also. But traditionally, the area and the island of Corsica used to be dominated by a whole lot of like bulk winemaking, just major exportation of a ton of very simple, very easy wine just to be drunk cheaply. It wasn't until the 80s where there's kind of been a giant retransformation of things made much higher quality. There is, I believe, 9 appellations of real significance in Corsica. We're going to focus on 3 or 4 of those today with a couple of wines that we've got here in the shop as we chat more about those. But you've got Patrimonio way up north. You've got the tiny finger at the top of the island, which is Cap Corse. You've got an area towards the southwest called Ajaccio, if I pronounced that right, which is probably one of the lesser known areas, but does home the capital of Ajaccio, actually where Napoleon Bonaparte was born and had much of his reign. And also, fun side note, was a big part of the reason why Corsican wine could be exported duty-free to the French Empire during that time. Up to the northwest, there's an area called Corsica that we'll talk a little bit about. There is on the eastern seaboard, there is Vindicorse. It is a island that is incredibly rugged and incredibly mountainous. It's an area that I've long wanted to take my road bike, a full wallet, in about 3 months' time to cycle, eat, and drink. So anybody going, I can fit myself into a suitcase if that's a possibility. But the whole region and the whole island itself, again, is very geographically diverse based on the rugged landscapes. On the eastern seaboard, again, an area called Vindicorse, a bit flatter, a bit more warm climate. Way up north in Patrimonio and Cap Corse and Corsica, super mountainous, super rugged. Drives of 10 miles take 10 hours. But it's an area that I always kind of liken to being, take Côte d'Aron, traditional styles, traditional grapes, and then crank that up as if you're on a great mushroom trip with friends while camping. That's how I explain kind of Corsican red wine in terms of its similarity to Southern Rhone varietals. The main varietals, speaking of, that dominate Corsica are a grape called Nealuce, which actually is a very close clone to Tuscan Sangiovese. You've got a grape called Chucarello, which is a little bit lesser known and has a lot of similarities towards Southern Rhone French Grenache. And the main white grape produced is a grape called Malvoisie, better known as Vermentino. In the 80s, when they kind of brought winemaking back with more seriousness in order to kind of catch up to the rest of Europe, there was a lot of plantings of Chardonnay, Cabernet, Merlot, but it wasn't until recently, about 20 years ago, where the focus came back to more traditional indigenous varietals, such as ones that we have here that we'll talk about. So I guess enough history and enough geographic stuff. Let's talk about some booze.
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
Where should we start? Let's start with white. I would say the most predominant white growing region in Corsica is way far up north. It's an area called Patrimonio. Patrimonio is an area that's extremely coastal. It's also extremely mountainous, just off the coastline, and soils are dominated by a ton of rocky limestone and a lot of like really kind of prehistoric seabed kind of shale, where you get a lot of really high kind of salty, briny energy in a lot of these wines. This wine that we have here is a 100% old vine Vermentino Malvoisie from Domaine Gentil. Gentil is certified organic, and they play around with incredibly sloped mountainous vineyard sites in an area in western Patrimonio called Saint Laurent. Saint Laurent is probably one of the more mountainous areas just west of Patrimonio. And again, it showcases through and through what coastal, northern, high elevation Vermentino can be, which is elegant, pretty, briny. I always say it's like taking a really, really, really gorgeous Italian white wine that has balance and a ton of fruit, but then wrapping it up in kind of a sultry wedding dress and add a little bit of salt and kind of pickle brine to it and wrap it all up in a really pretty package. It's a stunning wine. It's meant to age. It sits on its lees as it ferments in steel, just to kick up the structure and the weight. $33 on our shelf. One of the prettiest non-traditional white wines I think we have here in the shop. Domaine Gentil, 100% Vermentino from 2016. Let's move to rosé. The Domaine Vitricia is a beautiful Eastern Corsican rosé. That's a combination of Nieluch, Grenache, Chicorello, Merlot, and I believe a little bit of Mourvedre in the base of the cepage. Vitricia does a bunch of farming, all organic, from an area on the east called Vindicorse. Again, a bit more low-lying, a bit more plains, but they play around with these grapes in a way that is made to just be for the table. This rosé is a powerhouse for $12.99. Arguably the rosé, I can say this, the rosé of the year so far. We go through cases of this every day. It's one of my favorites for the year. It is a full-weighted version of a true showcasing of Eastern Corsica, meant for like grilled pork loin, or just next to a bowl of cereal, whatever you want. $12.99. Vitricia Ile de Butte, which is kind of a bit more vin de France style, not quite as serious, but absolutely delicious. Let's go back to Patrimonio. We're going to do a 100% of a grape called Nieluch. Again, very similar to Southern French Grenache, from Clos Marfisi. Marfisi is kind of an interesting story. The actual vineyards were home to a giant amount of olive oil. The olive oil baron left behind a very thick structure made of all concrete, which is where all the wines from Marfisi age. The Gratol bottling of Nieluch from Julie and Matteo is certified biodynamic. It is all the younger vines of 100% Nieluch, ferments in steel. Nothing has touched any of these vines forever, other than just hands, hard work, sun, and tears, and all done incredibly simply. The wines are bottled with very little sulfur. It is a little Ferrari once you give it about 20 minutes of time to let that blow off, but meant for a Parisian boardwalk cafe with a lamb sandwich and some friends, and then a cigarette to follow it all up. It's so delicious, not traditional, but so full of brightness. A really fun, I think, true expression of that grape, just made for food and no nonsense. $22, Clos Marfisi Gratol Nieluch from Northern Patrimonio. Last, certainly not least, probably the most, I would say, approachable, if I even want to, version of wine from the area. This is done by Domaine Maestracci. Maestracci was founded by Roger Maestracci, and this is the only female winemaker we've got here in the lineup. His great-granddaughter, Camille Maestracci, now produces all these wines. It's a blend of mostly Nieluch and Grenache, I believe. Chicorello is added as well as Syrah and Mourvedre. This is young vines, fermented in steel, and then aged in steel as well to increase the bright, fresh, kind of cleanly style. I would say the most approachable and the most round of all of these wines, but still light, still lean, still pretty, That's the one thing that dominates all these wines, is they're not necessarily meant to age. There's nothing super serious about these wines. You're not going to impress any of your dad rock friends who've got 1,000-bottle cellars somewhere in Napa Valley. You're not going to find any of these wines on Wine Spectator lists. You're not going to find any of these wines sitting on their side for 30 years. They're meant for the table. They're meant for food. They're meant to be enjoyed young. And they're meant to be fun and peppy and bright. And I think that's one of the reasons why I really like the area of Corsica, is that it's just true, small family, no-nonsense winemaking, which is a style that I like. And I guess we like here in Metro Wines. So come and get them, plenty of all. Again, Domaine Maestracci, Clos Reginu, from the very clay and limestone plateau, $17.99. Clos Marfisi, 100% Nieluch, $22. The rosé of the year so far, Vitricia Corsican rosé from Vin de Corse at $12.99, and the Domaine Gentil Vermentino from Northern Patrimonio at $33. If you have any questions, give me a call here at the shop. Again, I'm Brett. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.